What did Mr Morrison do? Did he take responsibility? Did he step up? No, he went missing again. You see, it's not good enough to send a junior minister at the last minute, which is what the government did, in the hope that you might change someone's mind. It's not good enough to mismanage your Pacific Labour mobility schemes. It's not good enough to be arrogantly dismissive of the concerns of Pacific Island nations on climate, and it's not good enough to cut development assistance by over $11 billion over the time they've been in government. So one of the ways in which Australia can deal with the strategic circumstances we face is to secure our region, and the Pacific is our region. Happy to take questions.
Do you think that this could have been headed off if the federal government had sent a foreign minister?
Well, I heard Marise Payne on radio today not answering the question about why she didn't go. What I would say is this, that whether it's Mr Morrison going missing or Marise Payne being passive, someone in government needed to take responsibility, because this goes directly to Australia's national security. This goes directly to our national security, and this was a time where Australians needed the Prime Minister, Mr Morrison, not to go missing yet again.
David Littleproud's been on News Breakfast and said that Z Cecilia went there with the support of Labor. So why criticise that move now?
Well, we would always support ministers going overseas to work for Australia's interests when it comes to foreign policy and national security. But do I think it was too little too late? Clearly it was. Just remember this. This is our region. This is the Pacific region. This is the region where we have been the partner of choice. We are whom the Pacific turns to in times of challenge and times of need. But this is what has happened. I want to compare what the Biden administration, what our principal ally, the United States, is doing. They are sending Kurt Campbell, Ambassador Kurt Campbell. Now, he is President Biden's top national security advisor on the Indo-Pacific. And we send Zed.
Has Labor had any contact with the Biden administration on this?
We obviously have engagement, as is appropriate for an opposition, with allies and partners, and will continue to do so.
Do you think the United States believes Australia has dropped the ball here?
Well, I'll leave it for others to commentate. I would say this. Just as it is the expectation of the Australian people that an Australian government should always work to secure our region, and just as it is the expectation of the Australian people that the Pacific is our region, it has also been the expectation of successive US administrations that Australia does demonstrate the leadership that is required in the Pacific. And demonstrably, Mr Morrison has neither demonstrated leadership nor demonstrated responsibility.
You say that the Pacific is our region. Obviously, the Solomon Islands has made this decision as a sovereign nation. But what does this, I suppose, reflect about the way the Pacific is viewing Australia?
This is our region collectively, isn't it? We are part of the Pacific family. And you know, we have always, over decades and successive governments, been part of that Pacific family and been an important part of that community. What I would say is this. You know, Pacific Island nations have watched as this government over many years has cut the aid budget, have watched as they've mismanaged the Pacific labour schemes, and they've watched as Australia has pushed back on their concerns on climate. And remember, this is not a part of the Pacific family's political leadership that is talking about climate. It is every Pacific leader. So the